The New York Attorney General just filed new allegations against OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma and its owners. The suit claims that members of the Sackler family fraudulently transferred funds from the company and repeatedly downplayed the drug's risks. It's not just New York Attorney General, by the way, that's taking actions. Just days ago, Purdue Pharma paid a groundbreaking $270 million settlement to Oklahoma following allegations that it helped fuel the opioid crisis in that state. In response to today's news, attorneys representing the company's owners said, quote, expanding this baseless lawsuit to include former directors of Purdue Pharma is a misguided attempt to place blame where it does not belong for a complex public health crisis. We strongly deny these allegations, which are inconsistent with the factual record, and will vigorously defend against them. All right, so who's at the center of this lawsuit? I want to introduce you to the Sackler family. They made their $13 billion fortune through their ownership of Purdue Pharma, the maker of the painkiller OxyContin, which is the drug at the center of it all. A recent court filing in Massachusetts suggested that members of the family were involved in deceptive marketing schemes to increase OxyContin's sales. This filing also blamed the company for pushing doctors to prescribe higher doses for longer periods of time to make the drugs and making the drugs more addictive. And now the extremely wealthy and philanthropic Sacklers are facing backlash from all over. If you're into art, you've definitely seen their name. The Smithsonian has the Arthur M. Sackler Gallery. The Met has a Sackler wing. So does the Louvre. But in recent months, many of these institutions have tried to sever ties with the benefactor. Just last week, Britain's National Portrait Gallery turned down a $1.3 million donation from the Sackler Trust, and now the trust has stopped donating money altogether. Here's why people are so angry. The National Institute on Drug Abuse says roughly 21 to 29% of patients prescribed opioids for chronic pain misuse them. Now, I just want to be clear before people start tweeting me about this. 21 to 29%. That means 70% don't. And if you're one of those who don't, this shouldn't affect you. But patients who use prescription drugs like OxyContin and others, including fentanyl, hydrocodone, codeine, and morphine, are at risk. Since 1996, more than 200,000 people in the United States have died from a prescription opioid overdose. And keep in mind, it's not just the Sackler family behind this. Other drug companies like Johnson & Johnson, Teva Pharmaceuticals, Allergan, and Endo Health are also all facing lawsuits. Joining me now is ProPublica senior reporter who's been following this issue closely, David Armstrong. David, it feels like this crisis has now reached a new level where we are finally dealing with where this problem started with, this culture of eliminating pain, which exists nowhere else in the developed world like it does in America.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ali. I mean, we've seen a crescendo in the last few weeks with the lawsuits and some disclosure of new documents about the Sackler family. And I think it's important to remember, Purdue Pharma was very influential 20 years ago in changing the whole paradigm around how we treat pain. There was something called pain is the fifth vital signal, so that every doctor's office, every hospital was closely monitoring this. And before this, these drugs, these powerful narcotic painkillers, were largely used end-of-life care, people with, end-stage cancer, those kinds of things. So they really changed the whole discussion and medical thought process.
Where addiction wasn't a serious matter to concern oneself with because we were trying to give people comfort at the end of their lives.
Well, that was the flip side of what they did. Along with the campaign to change how we talk about pain and how we prescribe these drugs, they told doctors this was not addictive. And they've been held accountable for this already in 2007 when they paid a federal fine of $600 million. So this was key to the whole process here, is not only should we be prescribing more, but guess what? It's not addictive.
There are people who say, and I will get tweets, and you probably will, from people who say, hey, there are really people with pain who really require these things, and because of this attack on the opioids and because of the opioid crisis, it's harder for people who have legitimate pain needs to get prescribed the proper doses of these medications. Is that true?
Well, I think, yes. I mean, there has definitely been a reduction in the number of prescriptions in this country for these kinds of painkillers. Some people argue that's an overreaction. I don't think anybody wants to see somebody inhumanely cut off from their opioids if they've been taking them for years and getting some relief. And I think there is a balancing act there to be done. The other point, though, is that we've seen just an incredible increase over the last 20 years in the number of prescriptions for these drugs. Something got out of kilter.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.